Hello everyone, and welcome to a video on the Constructive Criticism YouTube channel. I'm Spencer, host of Constructive Criticism and Limited Time Only, two podcasts about getting better at Magic the Gathering. Today is another deck tech. I'm excited to talk about this one. This is something that I was trying to figure out early on in the format, is kind of like how to get in some of the cards that I was the most excited about. And Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, was one of them. So I started kind of going through some different decks. I tried some Blue-Eye Control. I really liked Sealaway and Teferi. I realized I kind of wanted to ramp my Teferi out. I kind of went back to Jim Davis's old Bant Approach deck. Then Jim Davis yesterday was streaming with an updated version of the Bant Approach deck. And we came to a lot of similar points. So I'm really excited to talk about kind of where I'm at with this deck. So let's get started. So the first thing that we have here is 3 cast out. We have 3 cast out, 1 Ixalan binding. I really like that this deck has a lot of ability to cycle cards in certain matchups, and I also find it important that you do get a split between cast out and Ixalan's binding, just so that you're able to deal with their cast outs or Ixalan's bindings, as well as hedge your bets with the cast outs themselves. I think that one thing that people underestimate is the instant speed of cast out. It wasn't very good at when it first came out, but I think that the problematic permanence, that it deals with right now is pretty big deal. And the fact that we're in a world of Godfarer's Gift and Gods is it's just so important to have these 2 effects in your deck right now when you're playing something like this. The next thing that I have here is Gift of Paradise. I have 2 of these. The first thing that I'll say is I really, really hate Thematic Compass. I'm not sure why that's all over a bunch of the Bant Approach decks. And I also don't understand the point in cutting Gift of Paradise. When I think about this deck, right, it's got 3 Fumigates, it's got Teferis, it's got, it's got so much that it wants to ramp into. And this really pads your life total while allowing you to do that. And I don't think that, Spring to Mind is enough ramp for this deck. I think that it truly is like a rampy style control deck of old, and you have to keep that 3-cost ramp at the right level. So I have 2 Gift of Paradise still. I think the card's super important to the game plan of the deck, and it also allows you on turn 4 to leave up extra mana, right? So I can pay 3 on turn 4, put this on a thing, and leave up something like Essence Scatter or Seal Away, another card that I was really excited to try, and I think that this deck does a really good job of playing it. So one of the things that one of the actions I was really excited about was kind of Teferi's +1 in a control deck, right? Being able to draw a card and then protect itself with removal spells or counter spells was something that really excited me. And Seal Away goes really well into approach decks because you actually are forced to commit into approach in ways that you aren't forced to against other control decks, because they have sweepers and they have a win condition that's kind of guaranteed in the form of just casting 1 approach, drawing 2 it, and getting there. So I really like Seal Away in the fact that most decks, even with their very good creatures, are going to turn them sideways to attack you. So Seal Away was a big part of why I wanted to play Teferi, and Teferi was a big part of why I wanted to play Seal Away, and it's just kind of a really cool interaction. The other one that has a similar interaction is actually Essence Scatter. If you're able to play Teferi on a clear board and untap some lands with Essence Scatter up, it's pretty sweet. So I do have 2 of those in the deck as well. It's kind of also another way to deal with those problematic permanents before they come down, right? So, while I mentioned how important cast out and Ixalan's binding are, the same thing can be said of Essence Scatter, where it gives you early interaction against, some really tough things to deal with or things that you really care about. The deck, I'm playing all 6 sweepers, so I have 3 Settle the Wreckage and 3 Fumigate. I've seen a couple lists that maybe run 2 Settle or 2 Fumigate, 5 total. I really don't like that. I think that forcing your deck to be this Wrath, sweeper, 1 real win condition in the form of approach with kind of some sub-win conditions really lets you reset the board and keep them having to pressure you, right? We talked about forcing them kind of into those Sealaways, and I think that the Fumigates and the Settle the Wreckage do the same thing, because they force you to play around both of them, which is really hard to do. Sometimes I might not be attacking with everything because I'm worried about Settle the Wreckage, and then I just get Fumigated, and that's a pretty it's a pretty sweet thing to be on the Fumigate Settle the Wreckage side of it, right? The next thing that I have is Teferi. You know, I think that Teferi is really great. I think that it's important for the deck. I love its -3. I love the fact that you get an emblem with whenever you draw a card, exile. Like, the card just reads Win the Game all over it for this deck. And that's another reason why I wanted Gifted Paradise, right? Is I want to be able to ramp into my Teferi a little bit. You know, untap 2 lands, protect it with Seal Away, and like if I untap the Gifted Paradise land, which is another reason to play Gifted Paradise, you know, I even have more mana, so I can, you know, on an empty board, you know, after I've Gifted Paradise, I can untap the lands and maybe cast another Spring, right? It's just super cool, the interactions that Teferi brings to this deck that fit really well into the mold of it. The next thing that I have on here is all 4 Approach of the Second Sun. So I actually had 3 before watching Jim Davis's stream yesterday, and the thing that I noticed is that he drew them so consistently compared to some of the games that I had been playing with only 3 that I was like, okay, this might be actually worth it to play all 4 of them. It kind of sucks because it's like clunky and stuff like that, and like when you're playing against control, the card's actually really bad and you already have a lot of bad cards. But you're pretty good against that deck anyway because of like Ipnu Rivulet and you know, Hour of Promise being things that must be answered, and then you're just really good against them after board. So I think it's okay to have 4, but it certainly does have its downside, and that's why you'll see some lists play 3. But just the pure consistency seemed worth it to play 4 of them. Next up, I do have 4 Hour of Promise. This is just one of my favorite Magic cards. I really enjoy it. This is probably why I'm interested in this deck, is because I'm a sucker for this. But, you know, being able to go grab, like, an Arc or, you know, a Scavenger Grounds in certain matchups, like, I just love the utility of the card. It just does so many things, and it does them all pretty well. So, 4 Hour Promise, really big fan. You know, it also ramps you directly into your approach, which I also think is sweet. So, I mean, 5 into 7, dude. We have 4 Spring to Mind. You know, gives us that ability to search for lands, while also giving us some card advantage late game against certain types of decks. This card's really good in the Control Mirror. It makes me really happy to be playing the style of deck in the Control Mirror. I have no qualms about this card. It's nice to find a deck that wants this, because the card is cool. It's just like, it's not great on either side, right? The raid is kind of bad for both, but it kind of comes together really well in this deck because you want to ramp out your Teferi, you want to ramp out your Fumigates, things like that. So we do have 26 lands. So we have 1 Arc, we have all 4 Botanical Sanctums, 2 Desert of the Indomitable, 2 Forests, 1 Hashep Oasis, 4 Ipnu Rivulet, 4 Irrigated Farmland, 1 Island, 2 Plains, 1 Scavenger Groves, 1 Scavenger Grounds, 1 Shefet Dunes, and 2 Sunpetal Grove. So one thing that I think is important is having the right number of certain types of lands in your ramp decks. Sometimes people mess this up. It's really important to have 2 Plains to be able to, like, Spring to Mind for them enough that you can get double white, right? We also need an island to be able to Spring to Mind for, so you have to make sure that you have the lands that you need. So you want to keep your desert count high enough, and part of keeping your desert count high enough is sometimes playing deserts that, like, you're probably never going to activate, right? So, like, Hashep Oasis and Shefet Dunes are probably not going to be activated in this deck, basically ever, but what's important is that you have enough untapped lands to cast your spells still, so you include them anyway. So that's kind of some thoughts behind the lands. One thing that we did skip is there are 2 Search for Azcanta. This card is kind of an automatic given in being in the deck, right? Because it's really, really good with Approach of the Second Sun, and it also allows you to, like, make some pretty important plays early on in the game in the form of it. Our sideboard is 2 Carnage Tyrant, 4 Regal Caracal, 2 Desert's Hold, 1 in Bolas' Clutches, 1 Jace's Defeat, 1 Naturalize, 3 Negate, 1 Fragmentize. So the only thing that I'm pretty unsure about in this sideboard is the Naturalize Fragmentize split. The reason that I like it is I want cheap spells like Fragmentize in my deck, in my sideboard. Like, I like having, you know, a diversification of answers and cheap answers, right? So, like, against Artifact decks playing, you know, Artifact creatures that are cheap that are going to be attacking you, Fragmentize is obviously better than Naturalize. It's also better to be able to protect your interactive spell in the form of Fragmentize with Negate, right? Because it's cheaper. But I don't know how often the sorcery speed is going to matter, and I also don't know how often the converted mana cost thing is going to matter. But I do have a split there. I do have all 4 Regal Caracal still. Obviously, I kept in Gift of Paradise. Because of that, it makes Regal Caracal better. And overall, I'm pretty happy with the card. It really forces people to play, once again, into your cards because they have to commit more. And if they don't, it just like holds down the ground really well. Bolas's Clutches is a card I'm pretty excited about in this deck specifically. Just because, you know, being able to produce card advantage in this way, and also do it quickly because of the mana investment, the ramp spells that you have. It's just overall pretty good, I think. So that's it for this deck tech. I'm really excited about this deck. I'm probably going to stream it a little bit. I really like where the numbers are at and things like that. The mana base is probably the thing that I'll work on the most. So if you have any thoughts on that, please leave a comment. Let me know what you think of the deck. And yeah, we'll see you guys all next week.